Hello, I'm James Kelly, and I'm the host for the A Course of Love conference. And I've got four beautiful beings joining me today. We've got the Reverend Reja, Tom Whitmore, Lee Flynn, and Mari Perron. And as you know, Mari is the first receiver of A Course of Love. Tom and Reja, they really are some of the founders of Course in Miracles Society, which produced the original edition. And Lee Flynn is a long-term student of A Course in Miracles, and he lives the Course of Love in his life and his groups that he manages online. So we're all friends, and it's a beautiful gathering. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, James.
It's a pleasure. Yeah. Do you want to start us off, Tom, with some stories around how A Course of Love, the original edition of A Course in Miracles started?
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting story. It really started. Well, first of all, what is the original edition of A Course in Miracles? It's the production of the 1972 transcript of the text mainly of A Course in Miracles. It also has the workbook for students and the manual for teachers. Those aren't so different from the familiar blue book, but the text is different. And the text was produced from the 1972 manuscript, which was completed by Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford at that time in 1972, and it was circulated amongst some people, particularly to Edgar Casey,
Hugh Lynn
Casey, the son of Edgar Casey. I'm sorry, that's why I stopped there for a second. I was not sure of the name. Hugh Lynn Casey. So it's the HLC edition, it's referred to. Because a copy of that was lodged in the ARE library in Virginia, and that's where it came from, I believe. It was photocopied from the manuscript that was there. And it came to us in kind of a back alley way, I guess you'd say. It was a time when there was a lot of controversy around the reproduction of parts of the course and the copyright issues with the course. And students were busy on the internet exchanging electronic copies that were sort of bootleg copies of A Course in Miracles. And so in December of 1999, one of those copies came to me in email, and I really didn't pay much attention to it. I looked to see what it was, and I didn't look deeply enough because I just set it aside. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, the person who'd sent it to me called me or emailed me with the question, "So what did you think of it?" And I didn't really have a response other than, "Well, I already have an electronic copy of A Course in Miracles." And so she said, "Well, look again because it's different." And so I did look again, and it's turned out to be quite different. And so that copy I shared with Reverend Reja and some others, and we sort of began talking about it and making copies from it and circulating those among our people, our course friends. And finally, we got the idea that this is just too difficult to do this way. We need to print this. And we'd had a lot of requests for copies. And so we printed it. And Joy has a great story about how that all came to be. We had it ready for the presses, but we didn't have the wherewithal to print it. So
yeah, we reformatted. We spent some time getting it print ready, and it was
all ready for the printer. The only thing we needed was a lot of money. We
Marty,
didn't have any money.
Mari knows the story, I think.
Yes.
Had that experience herself, I believe.
And what I like to think of is that the Course in Miracles originally had the same problem. They needed money to print. And there was a miracle around that. Somebody sold some land and they said, we've got the money for you. So that was beautiful. So it's a very similar thing happened. So was at a Unity gathering before Unity service. And it was a social gathering. Went up to somebody and he said, how's it going? And I said, it's going really good. You know, we're all ready to print, you know, because he knew about our project. And I said, the only thing is, and I wasn't asking for money. I was just saying, the only thing is, you know, we don't have any money. And he said, well, how much do you need? And I told him, and he said, you'll have it in the morning. I just practically fell over.
The most unexpected thing.
It was
Wow.
so beautiful, so perfect. So that's how the first 500 copies got printed. And what happened also is, and here's a beautiful, beautiful, I think a confirmation that we were on the right path, is that we got it off the press. We've got our 500. And someone came to town to give a talk. And that someone was Mary Ann Williamson. She got the first copy. We took it to that talk. And afterwards, she was, you know, after she was signing and, you know, talking to people in the big long line. And finally, we got to see her and we handed her the book and told her that this was the first copy of Jesus' Course in Miracles. And I think she might have known about it. She seemed to know about it. I don't know. But she hugged it to herself and she felt so blessed. And that was so, I just got chills. And then Doreen Virtue called and wanted a copy. I don't know if you know Doreen, the angel lady, right? So we got 500 copies out pretty much, right? Before we had to stop.
We printed 500. We got 300 out.
300 out.
Yeah.
And what year was that, Tom?
2000.
Yeah, that would have been 2000.
The spring.
And
then you want to tell them what happened?
Well, so I, as a lawyer, was very aware of the copyright situation. And I felt very strongly that we were on the right side of the law with this thing. So when we started distributing this, I filed a lawsuit in federal court in Omaha, Nebraska, for a declaratory judgment that the copyright was that had been placed on the course was invalid because of pre-publication distribution, and that didn't stick so well because the Foundation for Inner Peace filed their own lawsuit in Louisville, where one of our directors resided, to obtain an injunction against our distribution. And they got the injunction, and the Nebraska case deferred to the Louisville case. So that Nebraska case stopped, and the case went on in Louisville. But actually that was not so significant because the real case was in New York between Endeavor Academy and Foundation for Inner Peace. And that was where the bulk of the litigation took place, and our case was just put on hold. So we were sitting on these copies of Jesus Course in Miracles until that was all resolved. So, and it finally was.
Then the next thing that happened that year, 2000, in the spring, I was traveling to see my sister, and I had never met Lee. I think the first time we met was in 2000. Is that correct, Lee?
I think so, yes.
We had known each other online, CompuServe groups, Course in Miracles groups, and I resonated so very much with your posts and we all did. Well, I know I did. And So I wanted to meet Lee. So I knew Lee lived in Santa Fe, and my sister was in Arizona at the time. So that's on the way to Santa Fe. So he invited me out, and I went out to see him. And this is the spring of 2000. And, you know, when I was out there, we went out to a little diner. We were eating, and I heard very clearly, and this is another confirmation, I think, because it was guidance, and it said, put out there what you need. And I said, okay. And I said to Lee and to his friend, our friend Carol, we need to prove pre-copyright distribution. That's where we are. And that that was the starting point for Lee. And Lee, I think if you pick it up there, because you know so much more about how that came, what happened after I left Santa Fe, went on to Arizona, and there was sort of some miracles that happened in the weeks that followed that.
Sure, exactly. Reja and I both really cared deeply about my late partner. Reja and Carol Westwood hit it off immediately when she came to visit. And when Reja said that there needed to be proof of early unrestricted copyright of the Course in Miracles right after the manuscript was first completed that the FIP published and was taken to the West Coast to be distributed among close friends, that early unrestricted distribution had released the Course in Miracles into the public domain. That's the nature of unrestricted release. And there had been stories about that unrestricted release, but there was no proof as of the time Reverend Reja came to Santa Fe. My partner Carol had firsthand knowledge of that early release. And she was aware that I had proof because she knew that I had made an audio tape of the early promoter of A Course in Miracles who came through Santa Fe in 1977 and gave a wonderful talk where she had bragged about the wild Xeroxing and unrestricted distribution of the manuscript. And she took it to California to share it with friends. This was before its publication. So Carol, knowing that I had a copy of that lecture from 1977, and that I still had a copy somewhere in my home that I wasn't prepared to go searching for, began harping on me to find that old recording. This would be a recording of Judy Scutch-Whiston, who I had met on that trip to Santa Fe. I was reluctant to get involved, and I like to say what happened next was the result of the fact that Carol was an amazing miracle worker. And when I wouldn't cooperate in finding my copy of the tape, what happened was within a week of the time that she gave up on having me find my tape, she happened across someone else in Santa Fe who had also been present in 1977 and who had also made a copy of that talk. So she secured his version of that audio tape and found that there was, in fact, on that tape, all this discussion of early distribution. So it was Carol who discovered evidence that was necessary at the copyright trial of that early unrestricted distribution. And she brought that tape to me to try and clean up because it was so old from this other man that had recorded it, that it was very difficult for me to put into some kind. I was a sound engineer at the time, and very difficult for me to render into shape for it to be admitted as evidence at trial. It was after a couple of days of trying and not succeeding in being able to clean that tape well enough that I that I decided to look again for my copy. And my copy turned out to be amazingly easy to put my hands on. It was pristine. After all those years, it was a pristine copy of Judy Scutch. At the time, she was Judy Scutch. Judy Scutch Whitson today. Judy very elaborately discussing that Xerox machines in San Francisco had been running nonstop for days after he released that unrestricted copy of the early manuscript of the first edition of the Course in Miracles. This was pre-publication and pre-application for copyright. So that tape turned out to be very valuable at trial, and it was quite a story. It was quite something to be involved with, and there were multiple other little miracles in that whole story that had to happen for it to unfold as it did. But you know, the one thing I want to really point out in terms of this discussion is how much I feel is due both to Tom and to Reja and the rest of the crew that founded the Course in Miracles Society for both recognizing in your looking over that early manuscript, the one that was left with Hugh Lynn Casey at his Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia. When you found that and were able to discover just how different the original manuscript that Bill and Helen had prepared for publication was from the one that was published later as the Blue Book, it was that awareness of yours that led you to decide that it had to be made available. And there are so many of us that are so grateful for what you've restored early on and what we've been able to work with for 20 years now, of what had originally been intended for publication by Bill Thetford and Helen Sheckman prior to the significant editing that was done to the first 5 or 7 chapters of A Course in Miracles before publication of the Blue Books. And so what a joy it is to have the two of you here and speaking about just, you know, how you were really moved, and what a joy it is for me given my feelings about A Course of Love and its compatibility with the Course in Miracles, most especially the Course in Miracles as it's revealed in the original edition, given the material that's been restored to that first 5 or 7 chapters that had been edited away. And I find such a close compatibility that it's a special joy for me to see this close association between the Course in Miracles Society and Mari and Take Heart Publications with A Course of Love. So, and I'd love to hear the two of you speak, Reja, Tom, about your experience with A Course of Love and your own deliberations as to whether it feels to you like the same message and an extension of the same message.
Well, for me, it absolutely is. I like to describe it as further along the path, because I've been studying A Course in Miracles since 1992, so that's 25 plus years. And so I'm pretty familiar with the Course in Miracles, and so I'm more new to A Course of Love, although I'm not exactly new to it. I had it given to me in 2001 when it was the ink was still wet, and I read through it at that time, and it didn't. I mean, I appreciated that it was a significant work, but I just wasn't drawn to put down A Course in Miracles and pick up A Course of Love. But more recently, in the last year or two, I've really been delving into A Course of Love more deeply. And I think I'm on my third reading now in that period of time. And every time I read through it, I see more of the continuity between the two courses. The same concepts are present in A Course of Love as were present in A Course in Miracles, only they're taken further. And that's really what my sense is. There's no disconnect at all in my mind.
Right, and actually, I was thinking as we began this conversation, how blessed I feel to be part of A Course in Miracles and also A Course of Love, to have this dialogue, to have this communion. I am just completely blown away. It's so in line with my journey here. And I step back and look at it and think, there's no accidents. And it's like it's almost as if I had nothing to do with it. Not my little self. It's beyond that. You know, and I'm just sort of a spectator watching. And sometimes I step back and say, wow, because it's so beautiful. It's so I'm so blessed. It's just a blessing. And the thing is, it's like, for me, it's not an either or. It's not you either study the Course in Miracles or study A Course of Love. Mm-hmm. It's definitely an and. Yeah. And it's like, every time I hear the Course in Miracles, it resonates so beautifully on such a deep, deep, deep level. And that's the same exact experience that I have with A Course of Love. It's a resonance with a knowing, and being, and every word sings to me. So they both sing to me. It's such a beautiful, beautiful forgotten song that I'm remembering, but it's a treasure. And it's a discovery, as it says in A Course of Love. And so I'm so blessed to be part of, bringing that, whether they discover A Course in Miracles first and then go to A Course of Love, or do both of them, or do Course of Love and then do Course in Miracles, or do both of them. It's a discovery, and I'm completely in awe, almost in awe of it.
It is amazing looking back on your life, isn't it? And how these things came to you. And I feel just the same way. And I wanted to start out too with gratitude, because I'm so grateful to the two of you for going out and returning what Helen originally received. Because for me, as the receiver of A Course of Love, I feel like I really understand how important that is, that you restored it to what Jesus actually said when Helen was listening to him. And I am just so grateful for that. And it moves me so much. I am so excited to be reading it. Finally, my little pocket edition. But there are things in it that I think it's the first chapter, Jesus says something about how personal revelation is. And I remember for so long feeling kind of like, well, maybe this isn't right because it feels so personal, that you have this revelation come and then it feels like this is, there's like no other word to describe it. Like, it is just more personal than anything's ever been. But nobody was talking about the personal, So I go to this, restored Course in Miracles, and it's right there at the beginning, that personal feeling of revelation. And there are many things like that just blow me away. So I'm every bit as appreciative of as you are.
So one of the big differences that we talk about between the Blue Book and our original edition is the use of the word soul. And I, I think it's interesting that in the dialogues to A Course of Love, it comes to a point where it talks about individuated being, individuated being. And I equate that with the meaning of the word soul in the original edition. I think there are 129 instances where the word soul is used in the original edition.
I had to go find those right away. It's like I wanted to read everything. Yeah.
All but 5 of those were eliminated in the Blue Book. So in that editing, because of the supposed ambiguity of the word soul. It's not ambiguous to me. It means individuated being. So that's another parallel between the original edition and A Course of Love is that concept, although it's a different term that's used, but it means the same thing to me.
It's funny you say the dialogues, because that's what I was drawn to look at today. And thinking about the similarity that you just described was the first chapter of the dialogues, where Jesus is sort of welcoming us back to our person, saying it's not one or the other, you know, that we can have this personal self, we can have this individuated self of form, you know, and that was just such an incredible announcement as that book began for me too. And I wondered if you equated that with soul, because I wasn't really sure. I was like, well, you know, I mean, there are so many different descriptions, like Christ consciousness, or, but I'm really glad to hear that you do see that as the same, because the soul is spoken of throughout the centuries, you know, as this incredibly, as sort of the eternal spirit and all of that, and so.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I'm just noticing my emotions whenever you're speaking, and for me, it's almost like tearful, or it's something deeply emotional about this. You know, the connection between the two of them, but also, you know, the restoration of something that was the original, you know, translation that Helen and Bill had ready for the world. I mean, there's something so precious in that, for me, on an emotional level to hear. And to be open to it. I was only really open to the original edition at the beginning of this year, and you know, I spent 18 years with the Foundation of Inner Peace book, and I know that you can get it or become peaceful or enlightened, or whatever word you want to put on it, awakened, no matter what translation you read, probably. But also, there's something so important there that it just makes it so much real for me. I think where it touches me is it becomes so much more real for me in my life, rather than something I'm studying or something it can be quite intellectual, but somehow it becomes so much more real, I suppose, in a heart way. It touches my heart. And, you know, when Lee has spoken in the past, he talks about how A Course in Miracles has touched his heart all through the years. And I'm going, how did it miss mine? But I mean, obviously it touched my heart to some extent, but now I can somehow feel that I'm open to it in a different way. And I'd like to hear Lee say a little bit more about, you know, when he was reading A Course in Miracles, how it was a heartfelt connection for you, Lee, because I know you have spoken about that before.
Well, I understand what you mean about coming by the original material that the Blue Book is based on, and feeling so much heart, so much more presence of the author in that original material. That's been the experience of a great many people. And for me, there was a significant experience in 1990 for me that opened my heart sufficiently, so that I wasn't It was just a significant experience, James, where my heart opened enough that everything I had assembled for that first dozen years of study intellectually was overtaken by an understanding of all those concepts from a different direction, and one that was much more full. And that's the sense in which I can tell you that even prior to coming to this original material that began to emerge in 2000, that I had touched in a heart way with the message at the center of the course. But what's exciting to me is to find all the people like yourself who report that working entirely with the blue books for them had seemed more of an intellectual kind of process, and how much more enriched their understanding both of the material and of the author of the material was after coming by the original edition of this Course in Miracles, or its sister publication, the Sparkle edition of the Course, or in whatever way people are able to read the early unedited material. People report really having their heart much more open to the nature of the author of this material and his presence for them. And it occurred to me just to sit and appreciate that I've known Tom and Reja for this 20 years, just at the same point that we're celebrating 20 years ago that Mari began to receive A Course of Love. And in a very short couple of years, we'll be celebrating the 20th of the Course in Miracles Society as well. So, two sister publications in a couple of ways here. And
I've heard John Mundy talking about dates a lot, and so I think it's become more in my mind. So when you were talking about how this happened around 1999, 2000, I was in the midst of receiving A Course of Love then, so it's sort of like you were finding that and I was creating with Jesus Course of Love, so there is a similarity in the sequence of time too.
Kind of makes you wonder who's in charge.
Yeah. And I always like to show my Course in Miracles. I'll never give up my old blue book, because this thing was like it was just a constant companion, and I have so many notes and stuff in it, but it's not the original edition. It's not. It doesn't affect me in the same way. So maybe someday my original edition will look like that.
Yeah, I still have my copy of the blue book that I studied for those early years, and it is kind of dog-eared.
Yeah, I bet everybody's is.
It's a daily thing,
I know also that there's no hard feelings between Course in Miracles Society and the Foundation for Inner Peace with the Blue Book. I understand your relationships with them are absolutely fine. Is that right?
Right, they're quite good. In fact, at the recent conference in San Francisco earlier this year, it's still 2018, right?
Yeah.
Wow, is this year?
Yeah,
it's a long year.
Long year.
That's true. We actually got together with some of the leadership folks at Foundation for Inner Peace and had a good chat with them, and our relationship with them is very good. There maybe at one time there were some hard feelings between us, but whatever that was is gone.
I think at this point, however, and at the conference, I even danced with Bob, the president, I guess, we're dancing, and we got a picture together and everything. But I think also still at this point, it's advertised that ours is not the what's it called, authorized? It's not authorized by Helen. And so they make a huge point about that. And so we have an unauthorized version, and that's okay.
Well, if theirs is authorized and ours is unauthorized, ours is original and theirs is
Right.
we don't really have to go there. I mean,
Yeah.
what we say to people is, choose the one that speaks to you, because people are tuned differently and they hear differently and read differently. So the one that resonates is the one you should use.
Mm-hmm.
And like our study group, we have there's
We have
few
all
people.
three.
What? We have all three?
All three versions.
That's right, people. We have all three versions. So yeah, it's not one or the other.
Yeah, the third one that I referred to is Robert Perry's recent publication of he calls it the complete Course in Miracles, which includes a whole lot of material from the notes that made it to the text but didn't make it into what we call A Course in Miracles. So there's a lot of added material in his. But so that's the third one that people bring to our weekly meeting.
Okay. Wow. Well, I just like the story of Helen bringing it, because I know she was kind of reluctant, and that she and Bill took it themselves to the Casey Institute with the idea of publishing it. So that really speaks to me of what her intent was, and I didn't hear that for a long time, and just even that she was willing to take it somewhere to get it published, because from just reading little bits like Journey Without Distance, she seemed always kind of on the fence a little bit.
Well, I think Bill was her muse in a lot of ways. I mean, he encouraged her at the very beginning to continue with the process. She felt very awkward about it. Here she is, a psychologist, hearing a voice, and so she was never really comfortable with that idea. But Bill told her, I understand, well, just bring it in and let's look at it. Let's see if there's anything to it. And when he saw what it was, he said, let's continue with this. And he became her stenographer, in effect. She would read her notes to him and he would type them out. And that became a daily drill for them. But it was always with Bill's encouragement that Helen continued with the process, because she seemed like always ready to put it down. and I think it was also Bill's communication with Hugh and Casey that resulted in their trip to Virginia Beach with the manuscript. So he was always there urging the process forward.
Well, thank goodness for him.
Yeah. So we honor him as a co-scribe, because I don't think it would have happened without his continual presence there.
True. Right.
That's nice that you honor him that way. Wow. I was just thinking how Jesus started out so strong, because I kind of thought if A Course of Love hadn't started with the prelude being, the prelude to me is one of the best pieces of the whole course. It was like there was no way I could possibly deny that was something other than my voice, and to share that first piece, and get the confirmation of, wow, it's like you kind of, to have the strength and the will, the spirit to go on with something as unusual as that. And again, with the Course in Miracles too, it's like, wow, what a beginning,
Yes.
How could you, how could you not go on?
Well, that's it. People ask me why I got involved in all this. I mean, why wasn't I just happy with the blue book and, you know, let the copyright thing go and all that? But it was, for me, it was, I didn't feel like I really had a choice. I felt just really compelled, and I don't normally have that reaction about things,
Yeah.
but it was something I couldn't say no to.
It's a calling.
The calling, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So
I just
grateful.
how important it is to me for Tom, you and Reja and the rest of the Course in Miracles Society to wholeheartedly endorse A Course of Love as fully compatible with A Course in Miracles. You're the first publisher to do that, of A Course in Miracles. I'm going to have to cough. Excuse me a moment.
Yes, that is so appreciated. And I feel as strongly about A Course in Miracles OE.
Well, thank you for that. I think part of that, my original reading back in 2001 kind of introduced me to A Course of Love. Even though I didn't pick it up as a daily practice, I knew what it was, and I had read through it, and I felt this, I don't know if the word is consonance with A Course in Miracles, with the original edition. It just felt very compatible. But my daily practice continued with A Course in Miracles, because I can never really get those lessons. You know, I have to just keep going. My mind needed a lot of training, I guess it does.
Well, you know, what was available in 2001 was this one. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I had it in my hands today at home because I knew this was coming up. I pulled it off the shelf, and it doesn't seem quite as thick as the one that I look at.
No, this was just the course. No treatises, no dialogues. So, but we were affected by the copyright suit at that time. So the opening line, in order to get it published, of this one is just, "This is the course of love. The time for you to take it is now. You are ready and miracles are needed." So we took out that it was a course, that it was claimed as the Course in Miracles to get it published. And then when this went out of print, we were able to bring back the original language because of what you did. You know, really. So that was a blessing.
Yeah, we're all working together, aren't we?
We are, yeah. Yeah.
May I mention that this collaboration between the two organizations has led to a search engine, which I guess will be released soon on your site, right, Reverend Reja? Tom?
Well,
it's coming, but I'm not sure exactly where.
It's going to be on, I think, Amari's site first. And
okay.
Sure, but I'm not in the loop right now, but I'm sure wherever it is, you know, that's the important thing, is that people have access. I've used it a lot. Oh my gosh, I've used it a lot.
Engine available on both sites for both organizations.
Yeah.
Whose purpose is to allow people with a single search term to come up with all the instances in both books on the same page, so that there can be an easy cross-referencing. If I want to know what both the original edition and ACOL say about heaven, I just type it in to that search page, which will appear both on jcim.net, which is the website for the original edition. That's JCIM, like in Jesus's Course in Miracles, .net, and it'll be available in a month or so, both there and at the Course of Love website. So we look forward to that, and that's just another, great collaboration between the two works.
I was going to say, at least before the conference next year. Absolutely before the conference, but maybe sooner than that.
Okay. All right.
Not sure. Thanks for mentioning that, Lee. That's great. I'd forgotten about that. So important. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think people will be really excited about it because it is so nice to be able to do that and just scan and so many revelations. Yeah.
I mean, and just what question is coming to me is, so people maybe listening to this, is there anything that when students are studying a course in miracles and then go on to study a course of love, is there anything that they should be doing as they approach both works? And is there anything in a different way that they should be approaching a course in miracles, do you think, and approaching a course of love? Is there anything you'd like to say to people on their kind of approach to it? If there's any differences that you would.
It seems like the
Go
great
ahead, Mari, please.
A course of love is the approach, that. So just say, leave the ego behind, leave the intellect behind, come to your heart, quit trying, quit studying, quit efforting, and let this just come into you,
Wow.
So that is a really big difference in terms of the way you kind of feel going into it, I think, because of course, A Course in Miracles. And I mean, I was pleased with that when I started reading it. This is a course. It's got, here are the principles. That was just fine with me. But it's so that seems like the biggest difference in the heart orientation, at least as you begin. And I still find it with people as it moves. Then, of course, it's have a big difference at the end where we're talking about the elevated self of form and moving into dialogue instead of being learning beings. We're beings to share in relationship, that sense that you need two or more, to be together. Yeah. So, a lot of those things. But the beginning, I think, is the biggest, that, you don't have to study this. Please don't study this.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, before you go, Tom, there. So what I heard you say there, Mari, was so that would be a good approach to how you would study A Course in Miracles without thinking about it. Because you were talking about A Course of Love. But that for me would be a beautiful way even to study. Whenever you said it, I thought, well, that's actually a good recommendation for people new to A Course in Miracles as well, to approach it without thinking about it. With that switching off of the intellect, because I think there is a way of studying A Course in Miracles that comes from the heart, that bypasses the intellect as well. So maybe, because when you were saying that, I thought this is a beautiful recommendation of how to read A Course in Miracles as well.
Great idea, James. And when I read A Course in Miracles, I didn't know anyone else who was reading it. I hadn't joined, so I just read it. And then I finished it and I read it again. And so it was just coming into me without any idea of what other people thought about it or anything. The only thing I read was Journey Without Distance in Marianne Williamson's book, so I didn't have a lot of ideas of what I was supposed to think about it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I, thought it was the greatest book to ever come to be, modern day scripture, all of that. And I loved it.
My experience with the course at the beginning was a little bit different because I had read Marianne Williamson and I listened to her tapes.
Mm-hmm.
We had tapes in those days. And I had, the course came to me and I remember sitting with it the first time I opened it and just fighting with it. I mean, it was like atonement, what? Because I had this upbringing that had, it had a specific meaning for atonement and it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't a pleasant thing.
One fellow Catholic to another. Yeah.
Right. And so at first I was sort of fighting with it. And I understand when people say, I threw it across the room, because I felt that way right at first. But I had the idea, well, just let it in. just let it in. And
Mm.
so I stopped judging it. I stopped, comparing it to what I'd learned anywhere before, and just let it in. And, starting chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and it became very much my friend after I, quit fighting. One of the things that's interesting is when you start the lessons, the first thing it says, the first lesson is nothing I see means anything. And then, and then you go down the lessons a little further. I give everything I see all the meaning it has for me. And you go a little further, I see only the past. These things are telling you to quit thinking so much. And that's way back at the beginning of the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I still, I would be happy just going through the first 50 lessons over and over and over, because I need to remember those things, and somehow I can't, when I'm out.
You're not alone.
We had an email from someone in Australia, and they said, finally picked up, it's been recommended several times, different people have told him that he was going to study. Several psychics had said he was going to pick up the course, and he just didn't for a few years. And then finally last year he picked it up, and then he emailed us just last month, and he said, how do I understand this? He was like, and we wrote back and we said, in the course it says that you can't explain the course to anyone. It is, it can set up the conditions for the personal revelation, but it's an experience. And so I shared that with him, and it was really wonderful. We've had a conversation back and forth, but that for me, the course is an experience. And I remember when I got the course like in, 83. I think I studied the Blue Book for 17 years before our edition. And, but it was, I remember reading The Dynamics of the Ego. And I remember beginning to tremble. And I think it was from a recognition. When I hear truth, I tremble. I do. And I couldn't stop shaking. And it was such an amazing experience. The Course in Miracles, I think as well, and thank you, James, for that, because as Mari was saying, how to, what the Course of Love tells, sort of lets us know that the time of learning is done. And that is so true now. Now, right in this moment, no matter what we're looking at, the time of learning is done. So open and experience it, and then it's not something that you can explain, but it's something you can be, Yeah. So thank you for that. And James, you said, you mentioned something about it being real. And that's amazing, because I keep hearing over and over, because I keep thinking, am I really getting guidance? Is this real? Am I on the path? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this incarnation? And I keep hearing, this is real. This is not, this is not made up. And then I get a sense of real, I say with a capital R. I've had it, I've had experiences even as a little child. I had a cat when I grew up Catholic. I wanted to be a nun. And I had this experience of the Holy Spirit coming just like to me. And it was, I have to say, it was like an experience that was real with a capital R. It was the most real experience in my life. And those experiences, when I open to them, they are always right there. It's real. It's not thought up. It's not pretend. And that's so reassuring, because it won't go away. It won't change. It won't change. I may go away, and I may look the other way. But when I choose, the reality is right there. Yeah. So
I think one of the keys to those truth experiences are that you don't ever forget. I mean, you can go back to that in an instant, you know, you think of it and it's like you're back there. You can see detail. You know, it's just, and I'm always saying, I can't remember anything, you know, but those things, I'll never forget. No, never.
Wow.
One of the thought I had about what's so wonderful to see this close association between these two works, as you guys have recognized, Tom and Reja.
But us
Is
all
that
being friends. I don't mean to break in, but I just thought, just seeing you in front of me there, you know, it's like I feel like everyone who's doing this gets so close, and not in a, you know, not in a businessy way or anything like that. It's a friendship way. You know, we become, we are in union and relationship in course language, but
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry, Lee, to interrupt. I just...
that was wonderful. Thank you. I'm feeling that as well. Increasingly, what I see from people that come to A Course of Love, who are Course in Miracles students, is how much they're touched by something that they had yet been closed off to in their study of A Course in Miracles. This is true for a great many who are coming to A Course of Love that I'm hearing from online and in person. People who, after they come to A Course of Love, when they return to their work with A Course in Miracles, see aspects and elements of A Course in Miracles that were right there, but that had been overlooked because perhaps of an intellectual bent, or featuring certain parts of A Course in Miracles that were more intellectually oriented.
Mm-hmm.
What I come to understand now is that A Course in Miracles had always been about awakening the heart. But that's all that it really was ever intended to do, is remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence.
Yeah.
So the two are sister publications in that way. Course in Miracles initially being oriented toward the mind, but always with the intention of clearing the debris from the mind that keeps the heart so encased. And as the heart is awakened even more fully by A Course of Love, and with some real, I don't know, it's like it's sped along the whole process. With that heart awakened, those who come back to the Course see things in the Course that had been overlooked before. And the tie-in here is, when they come back to original edition, the amount of material that arises from the first 5 chapters of the original edition of this course are even more emphasized by that awakened heart. They are those parts of A Course in Miracles that I'm most endeared to today, the parts that are in the original edition that were clipped from the blue books, the parts that speak about the nature of this life and the nature of this world in these really embracing terms. Those are the parts that really rise to the fore for me as I return to the Course in Miracles, having studied A Course of Love. And it's fun to see it happening spontaneously for so many others as well. So I'm complete.
I hear about them mainly from Lee, but it's so fun to hear the stories, you know.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think that's just a beautiful way for people to approach both works, knowing that they're both really designed a map or whatever way you want to look at it, but of really allowing your heart to open and to experience something new in a different way, experience yourself and wake up to that. So I think that's those words and our discussion, I think, has been very useful for people beginning and people along the road people who haven't experienced the Course of Love so much, and people who were tempted to leave A Course in Miracles completely for A Course of Love, but maybe they can look back on it now and see that they are sister works, because I know there's people who don't want to return, and that, you know, may come from some people, or yeah. And so we all have our, as Tom said, it's all listening to your inner guidance on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say is it's, and Joya has already said it, it's not either or, it's and they do fit together like left hand and right hand. You need them both, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, that reminds me of my son is well, he's an acupuncturist and herbologist, but, or was, but also he studied Taoism, and we would take walks every day and talk. And he mentioned something that was, and also I picked it up in something I was reading, that there's this duality, that we live in a dualistic world. And so there's this yin yang going on. However, what embraces all of that is this unity. So it's the yin yang is the dance within the unity that is there as well. So it's not either, you know, off on. No, we have the unity that embraces, and it's that felt so right when I opened to that, you know. Yeah.
There's so much talk in different ways about within too, like the real world is within, you know, and so you can picture that being within the embrace, which A Course of Love talks about, you know, it's like, it's within. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
I have little stickies on the Course of Love, and I have a W for within. Because I love that concept, because every time I think it's out there, you know, and I want things to be different out there. And then I remember in the Course of Love and the Course of Miracles where he said, you know, seek not outside yourself. And there's nothing, like we talked about, James, right before, is that it's all within. It's all mind, you within it, and it within you. There's nothing else. Just mind.
And you don't need a relationship. You know, you know, it's like that. I think, you know, some of those things went that way. Like you can just be there on your own, but you're never on your own. You know, there's always relationship. You know, unity, both ends. Yeah.
Unity and relationship. Yep.
Yeah.
And just what came to mind there might even be a stage for people to leave both books and have their journey, you know, supported by A Course in Miracles, Course of Love, but then be bookless.
What do you mean? Go live it?
Yeah, like go and live it. Yeah. Yeah. The dialogues or whatever that is, as you say, creation of the new. I love that A Course of Love goes to that. It goes beyond the book and leads us to, okay, well, let's go somewhere else.
Yeah. Leave the book behind and enter the dialogue.
Yeah.
Create the new. Yes. We get to be creators now. And I see that now in Course of Love. What I've read of the new edition too. I'm sure it's there in the other one, but that's one I'm noticing more, how we are creators like God. Very clear.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I feel very strongly wherever my heart is led and whatever clarity I come to and however capable of walking free of the books, I'll always know both these works as my mother tongue. That's rare in this world, to find two works so closely aligned that articulate that vision perfectly and unwaveringly. And that's what I really, really enjoy and cherish about both the original edition and A Course of Love.
Very well said.
Very well said. It's a
Very well.
beautiful way to end our dialogue, I think. Lee, with those words, those are very beautiful.
I have one quote I'd like to end
Mm.
with as well. It's a quote from A Course in Miracles, but I'm sure it's echoed in A Course of Love. And it's one of my absolute favorites. And it goes like this: from loving minds, there is no separation. And every thought in one brings gladness to the other because they are the same.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Reja.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Thanks for this, James.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Another
all right.
delightful hour. Yeah.
And happy 20th, dear Mari.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you, Reverend Reja and Tom, for joining us from Course of Miracles Society. And yeah, it's beautiful to have you back again. And I know your other people in this congress or conference will know that there was another one before that, and they can still go there and see.
Right.
I just want to mention that Lee Flynn is a Course in Miracles Society member as well. So he's part of the family.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, and Lee's going to be. In fact, everyone that's here in this Course of Love conference has made an appearance in the Course in Miracle conference. Lee hasn't done the recording yet, but we're all at both conferences, which is beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a beautiful reflection as well. I think there's more sharing between conferences, and it's the boundaries are less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for facilitating this, James. It's wonderful the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Truly is. He's the right person for it, isn't he?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect.
Thank you. And so, well, I think we'll say goodbye now, and until we meet again in some other form, in some other way, or even beyond form.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm.
Bless you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Um,
Stop here.